Welcome back. Once we get some students logging on, we will get started in just about 10 minutes. Welcome back. We'll get started in a few minutes. Okay, we're gonna get started in a couple minutes. Waiting for a couple more people to log on. We should be good to go. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So I've launched my Microsoft Excel and Office. So today we're going to be working with charts and graphs, but before we do the charts and graphs, I wanted to check back on something yesterday. So after we finished with our class, I went back and something didn't look right. And sure enough, I made a mistake. So I wanted to point that out. So here's our bakery sales. And if you look here, the mistake came in the recap. And here's what happened. So my coupon sales and sales without coupon, those formulas were working, but they were adding the wrong numbers. So what I did is I accidentally did the order total, and that was before the coupons and the sales tax. So of course, that makes no sense whatsoever. I should have been using just the total sales. And here's what else I should have done. The problem was, see, I was looking down here and I went and I selected these numbers up, so I couldn't see the titles. Well, there is a way to fix that. So I'm going to click on row 13. And one thing you can do in Excel is when you have a row that has headers, you can freeze it. And I'll show you how that works real quick. That's what I should have done last night. I click on my title, and then you'll see under the View menu, we have the option to freeze panes. So I clicked on View, and then now I see freeze panes. Okay. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can freeze the top row because a lot of times your titles are in the top row. You can freeze the left column, the column A, because that usually has titles too, and you can freeze them both. Or I'm going to click on freeze panes, and what it, oops, I missed it. So what it'll do is you click on, let's see, row 14, the one below it, and it will freeze what you have above it. So I'm going to make sure I can see my titles. Freeze frame, or panes. Okay, now when I scroll down, see how my numbers scroll underneath it? Then when I'm doing my recap, I could tell I'm supposed to be on total sales, not the order total. So here's how I found out. If you remember, I said that our numbers should add up. The total sales is 426. So in the first grouping here, people either used a coupon or they didn't. One or the other. No sales would be without either a coupon or no coupon. So if I add these two up, I'll just put it here and go back to my home ribbon and just do a quick auto sum. It should be the same as my total sales down here, 460, 216, and it is now. Okay, so I corrected it. The same is also true of my credit sales and cash sales. So I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to just use auto sum because it will lasso the ones I want very quickly. And just a quick check. Okay. So that's the other way to do it. This is also an opportunity to use that auto sum in the lower right hand corner, because when I select it, it should tell me the sum down here, and it does. I could have done this. That's what I should have done. And see that at 462.16 matches this one. And then back over here, these two, 462.16. So sorry about that. I messed up. But that's why it's always good to go back and double check your work. Okay, once you have the pane frozen or the columns frozen, you'll see right now it's freezing rows 9 through 13, and everything underneath that scrolls up like it's rolling underneath it. Okay, to unfreeze it, you can click anywhere because you can only have one set of cells frozen at a time. So I can go back to my view menu and unfreeze. You'll see the option here. And you only get unfreeze when panes are frozen. So I click on my little drop down arrow, and there's the opportunity to unfreeze the frames. And if you froze the top row, it'd say unfreeze top row. So it just turns it off. And now it scrolls normally. So it's one of those things you can leave on, you can turn it off anytime. It just kind of depends. Sometimes there is an issue if you're saving it and sharing it. If people don't realize they're frozen, so let me freeze it again. Scroll down, so I would be using it like this. So I have my titles with my totals and checking it. Okay, so I saved it like this, I shared it. I told you whenever Excel opens, it opens the way it was last used. It remembers all the attributes. And in this case, it would open it just like this. So if you just glance at this, you'd think, oh, okay, they just put in the totals without the figures. They'd have to scroll up to see them. Or if they have a sharp eye, they could look over here at the rows and notice that it goes from 13 to 38. Well, that's not right. So whenever it does that, they're either hidden, rows are hidden, or they are frozen and have slid underneath the titles, which is what happened in this case. So it's easy to go back to view, click on freeze, unfreeze. Okay. So there we go. Now, if I scroll down, my recap's correct. I double checked it, and we're good to go. So I'm going to close that. We're done with that. So even though Excel does a lot of the work, it doesn't do a very good job of double checking. You kind of have to use a little logic to do that. It's kind of like how computers are very exact. They're very literal. They are not very smart. So my grandmother got a bill from a store credit card, and it was like 12 cents. So she called them up and they said, oh, that was a mistake. Don't worry about it. Well, a month later, she got 12 cents plus, I think it was like 4 cents interest or something, a late fee or something. So she called them up and they said, oh yeah, that's the computer's fault. And they always blame the computers and said, don't worry about it. And Sure enough, she got another bill. So finally, she just wrote a check for 30 cents or something and sent it in. And it worked because the computer doesn't know whether it's 30 cents or $30 or $3,000. It's just wrong. But she pointed out, you know, they spent more money on stamps and labor. And when I called, they had to pay somebody and all that than 12 cents. They should have just written it off. But they said they did, but of course the computers weren't updated correctly. So like I said, computers are good, but see, in that case, it's either right or wrong. And same with my figures. The computer said there was nothing wrong with what I did because it wasn't looking at the logic of what I was trying to do in the context. So here we go. All right, so we're ready for some charts. So this is fun. This is where we get to use some graphics. So I open up a new blank workbook. I'm going to save this as Excel 07, charts and graphs. All right. Then I also opened the sample I sent you because it has all the data. And then we're going to use that data to generate charts and graphs off of it. So if you go over, here's Excel 07, charts and graphs. And we need all of this. So these are going to be separate charts. So I want to select A1 over, I'm going to go down first. Because I think we end here, yes, food trucks. So then I'm going to scroll to the right. And we do have a long list here. So it's AB58. So A1 to AB58, let's go back and double check. Yeah, that covers everything. So copy that, switch back over. And paste. Okay, I'm going to relabel my tab. Here's chart data. So the sheet name is chart data. And what we're going to do is use these groups of data to create some different charts. You will notice I always include a source whenever I can. I mean, the source in this case, like we took some data from the US Environmental Protection Agency, and all this is, of course, free online. If you're doing a chart, it's a good idea to have it down there just because it kind of tells anybody who's looking at it. And it could be just your own survey or your own analysis or something, and that's fine. I think it's just a good idea to have in there. So we included it in each one of these. We're going to start off with a line graph over time. So I'm going to select this data here, and this is seated here at A5 down to K9. I'm going to copy it, create a new tab, so a new sheet. And A1, I'm just going to paste it in here. And there we go. So I'm going to change the name of my worksheet to line graph. Now I'm going to change this data to, so I'm going to select the data, and you'll see it's from A3 down to K4. I'm going to copy. I'm going to click on A10, and I want to use the paste transpose. So I'm right-clicking. I click right-click, got my short menu up here, and then I see the transpose option. And that gives us the data two ways. All right. I'm going to increase my ribbon size here. So what we're going to do is now we're going to use a new window, insert. So there's insert over here. And at the top of insert here, you have a number of different chart styles. And I'm going to click on other chart styles and you'll see there are a lot. Lots of different styles. You decide what you're trying to convey in your image. And then from that, you can pick your chart style. So, for example, if you're trying to show growth or you're trying to show percentages, pie charts are really good for percentages. Columns and line charts are good for growth, and especially over time. Okay. So what we're going to do is I'm going to select the data here from A11 down to B20. So that's my years and the tons recycled. And then I'm going to select the line chart. So you'll see it says line. And I do have a drop down arrow here, so I can look at a couple different styles. I'm just going to use a simple 2D line chart. Okay. So it pops up here as a line graph. And you'll notice that it goes, my orange line here shows the growth over time. So it starts off down here at 100 and it peaks out here as a 3000 and then drops off a little bit to 3060. Okay, so once you have the graph, you can stretch it out. You can make it any size. And then there's ways to edit it. So one thing is, let's see the chart title here. So what we're looking at is recycled glass in tons in the United States. So I can double click the word chart title. And on the right-hand side of the screen, I have a number of chart controls. So we're going to go through these. So right now our chart title is chart title. Well, I don't want that. I want to say recycled glass over time. You'll see there is an option up here to turn this off if you don't want any chart title. And that's fine, because you might have it like here. I'm going to click on A2 and I'll make this very big. See, that can serve as my chart title. If I have that here, everybody knows what this is, right? But I'm going to turn that back on. Never hurts to have it. I like to keep it in there, even if I've got it somewhere else, because sometimes what you're going to see is you can move this chart into different tabs, into Microsoft Word, into PowerPoint, anywhere. And it can be its own graphic. You can turn it into a picture. So if you do that, it's good to have the chart title to go with it. So then you don't have to bring any cells over along with it. I spelled recycle wrong. And then I'm going to change it to say in tons with parentheses. Now, one of the differences between the 365 version of Excel and the desktop is on the desktop, you have a lot more options in for chart titles and modifying the numbers that show up on the left-hand side and things like that. The reason is just, has more features, and it's been around for a long time. So they keep adding things to it. So you get pretty fancy. In this case, you got a pretty bland chart title there, but that's all right. You can change the font. So I'll make it Arial black so it stands out a little bit more. You'll see there's the title position. You can do above or overlay. If you do overlay, then it actually interferes with the chart itself. So you see how it bounced it down? Once again, it's trade-off time. Sure, let me squish it up a bit so you can see it all at once. So it is overlapped, but now you can have a bigger chart. So it doesn't take up as much real estate on your worksheet. If you put it above, then you're going to sacrifice a little bit of size. See how everything got shrunk down. So I'll just leave it as overlay. So it's going to overlay on my chart. Okay. Next, we have the legend. So the legend tells the series. So I'm going to turn it off, and you'll see it took away the different number or different colors at the bottom to indicate which color is which, because we only really have tons recycled. That's all we really need. All right. Down below, you'll see you can control the horizontal axis, and you can control the vertical axis. The horizontal is the one that goes across, so it's the first number, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 10 numbers. You can put little ticks in here, and you can have minor ticks. The major ticks, we'll put them on the inside. If you see at the bottom, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see I got little marks pointing up in between the numbers. So it's just a guide. So as somebody's looking across it, they can kind of compare down below to see where they are. And then the minor type, I'll make it across here. And see, they show up in between the major type. So then you got ticks that show just above the line, and then the ticks that show above and below the line. So again, all this is basically what you feel the needs are for your chart. But this is a good way to see the progress in recycling of glass in our country since 1960 to 2018. So that's a lot of it. As we scroll down, you'll see there's a vertical axis. So the vertical axis is just what it says. It's these numbers here. And you'll see there's minimum and maximum. Now, if I look at my data, I don't start till 100, right? We don't have any numbers that are below 100. So I can make that the bottom of my graph just by changing that 0 and saying, no, I want to start at 100. And you'll see it slides down. So now the line starts at the very bottom, but it corresponds with the number 100. And you can see that very plainly. You'll see there's a maximum, 3,600. The computer picks that based on an estimate of your largest number in your list here. So you'll see that we go up to, was it 3190? Yeah. So it went up a little bit higher. On the vertical axis, you can change that to lower. You never want to go below the lowest number that you have, but you can go to say 3,200. Oops, that's not right. And see how it adjusts? And then it gives you more room in your graph. And then you can go by units. It's going by 500 at a time. So you can see it starts at 100, 600, 1100. So it's 500 increments. You can change that. You can make it 200. And you see you get a lot more numbers. So it's just how easy you want it to read across. All right. Again, you can add tick marks here. So let's just add the major tick marks. And I'll do it on the inside. You can also do the values in reverse order. Now this one actually can be quite useful. I'm going to go ahead and click it and watch what happens to my graph. So it reverses them, and now going down is bigger. Most people aren't used to that orientation. So it looks like, wow, things really dropped. Well, not really, because look at our number over here. We're still going up. So that can be very important, and you definitely want to watch that one. The other way to do that, by the way, is you know how we have our numbers listed. You can change those numbers, and as you saw, sort them in reverse order. Then the graph will show up in reverse order. So I'm going to just turn that one off. And then if you want, you can add labels. So right now we have the labels next to the axis, meaning the numbers are showing up next to where the lines start, right? So I could turn them off completely, and then you don't see anything. You can also adjust them so they're on the other side and everything. most of the time, though, the default next to axis is just fine, and that's where everybody expects it. You can change the font on those. One problem is, as like we're at 9 points, I'm going to change it to 12. As I make it bigger, it makes it harder to squish them all in there, so they look kind of cramped. Here you see Series 1 and Series 2. These are for the data, so you can modify the data just like we modified the labels. Okay. So those are the basics on this chart. Now this is a line chart to show the growth in time. If you wanted to, you can modify this chart, and we're going to see that in just a minute, and make it a different style, again, depending on what your goal is. Okay, so now that I've got it selected, I can go back to my insert ribbon. And while it's selected here, I'll get it set to line. I'm going to click on column, 2D column. Ta-da. So that's, once you have it set up, you can easily switch to different style. Like here's 2D I can't even say it, pie chart. That one doesn't make any sense. It's showing you proportions of numbers. So in that case, pie chart really wouldn't be the good one to use here. But just know that once you have it set up, you can thumb through these and take a look. Like the bar chart, it's handy. There's the area chart. We're going to get into some of these. Here's the scatter chart. So depending on what, again, you're trying to say, you're trying to make this chart to communicate something. Which style does it best? Well, I'd say in this case, the line, there's 2D. Now we do have some options here. So you'll see here, you can get little markers. So I'm going to switch you back to the line first. So there's our orange line. And when I go to line chart, I can get the little dots. And you'll see it's drawing a line from year to year. So ideally, you're imagining there's a transition. So from whatever this year was to that year, there was a greater increase. Well, it probably wasn't that even over the year. You know, it could have been a big surge in the beginning and then tailed off at the end, or vice versa, and then it drops. Well, those markers tell you where the data points are. So you know that the lines in between those dots are essentially conjecture lines. They're imaginary. The computer's not using data for those lines except to connect the dots. Okay. So in series 1, I'm going to go to the color, and because it's glass, I'm going to make it a gray. And in series 2, I'm going to change the color to a dark green, well, darker green, with orange dots. See, that makes the little dots stand out more. If you really wanted to see some figures with them, I can turn on the data labels. The data labels are the figures from the chart. So you'll see, we start at 100. Well, fair enough, it prints 100. Then it goes to 160, then 750, then 2630. Okay. You can turn on a couple of features here if you want to put on, oops, clear my drawings. You can include the series name. So it'll say series 2. If I had selected the tons recycled label, it would include that. You can also turn on the category, but you definitely want to have the value. If I turn off the value, see, then you can't see the numbers. And then the legend key just basically tells the people as they're looking at it what to look for to associate it with the number. You can turn on the comma separator, or you can have it a period, or you can have it break up. So if you're using the legend key, they can be on 2 lines on there. But for what we're doing, I think that works out pretty well, just like that. So, ta-da, we've done our first graph. As I mentioned, you can click on the graph and I can copy it. I'm going to click underneath it here to cell E28 and paste. All right, now I have another one of the exact same data, but maybe this one I want to change series 2 so that my outline is red. Okay. And this one, I want to turn off the data labels and see how it looks uncluttered. And there we go. So then you can copy it more than once. You can make one smaller, one larger. You can compare them if you want to just look for color-wise, what presents better. Or, like I said, if you wanted to change this, you can change our copy into, say, a column and look at the columns and what that would do. So the good news about this is once you create a chart, there's a lot you can do with it. And a lot will depend on what you're trying to say, but also where you have to say it. Like in my case here, I've got all this room. I got plenty of room. But there are times where you don't have a lot of room. So you have to crunch it down. Well, crunching it down makes it harder to read. So then you say, all right, I got to make some accommodations here. Which style will look best in small? And so you can work with that. Another thing you can do is we selected all of our data here. What I could do is change this. I'm going to put my copy back in. Oops. I'm going to paste it back. So once I have this here, I do have some additional tools I can work with. Once the chart's selected, you'll see we get a new ribbon that says chart, right? So I'm going to click on chart, and you only see this once it's selected. And it's essentially the same tools we had before. And you can see that up here, the different styles. But if you want, you can handle the different features here, including select data. So I click on it, and you'll see it says it's selecting A11 through B20, and it has the dollar signs. Remember what the dollar signs mean? The dollar signs are locked in place. So that means when they're copied, they're not going to move. So it's going to always be that link to that chart. And you kind of want that. Okay. So another option is when I'm clicked here and I select my data, let's say that I only want to go down from A11 to A15. So I click on my data and I'm going to change it to $15. Now watch what happens. Oops, I did the wrong one. I wanted B. Let's do that again. B11 to B15. So I'm just going to do those numbers for half the graph, and there it is. So I could do half on one side and then half on the other. You can do that, and you might need to do that when you see things like this. You see this large jump? So if I didn't have that large jump, it'd be easier to see the numbers. In fact, I can make everything bigger. But because that large jump is there, that's my problem. So what I could do is do two graphs that essentially go from like just the beginning. So that's our first three digits, first three numbers. This 100, 750. I could do that, and that would be a graph. And then I could start a new one here like that, and that'll be the 2630. So you'll see we avoid that big jump in the middle by making two different graphs. And then you can put them on either side of your charts or your data And that's a way to just kind of fiddle around and make things work better. So whenever you see those big jumps, just think about, hey, maybe I could split this into two graphs. And it's really easy to experiment with it, like we did right here. But I'll go ahead and delete that second one. I'm done. And we'll just leave the first. Once you start working with the charts, you do get this window over on the right side. You can always close it. When you close or select off of the chart, you're not selecting the chart anymore, you'll see there's nothing here to do. In fact, it'll tell you, select a chart. When I click on it, if I'm doing a lot of charts, this might be handy to be open because then it automatically pops up with my short menu of different items. But it works the same way as up here. It just depends on where you like to have your tools. So there we go, we got a chart. Any questions on how we did that? It's pretty straightforward. I like the charts because these numbers, I can look at these numbers, I don't really grasp the change until I see it, and there's big lines. So, we are visual learners as human beings. So the computer is quite happy with the numbers. The graphs are what we really look into. And if you're trying to show progress, you could say, look at this. We've had such great progress. Look how we jump. And then you can show the jump. And when at the end of the meeting, everybody's going to remember the jump. That'll be a big takeaway. All right, so that's our line graph. Let's go back to chart data. Now we're going to use the bar chart. So I'm going to select the bar chart title down from A13 to A17 and scroll to the right until I get over here to AB17. I'm going to copy this, create a new worksheet by creating a new tab. And this one I'm going to call bar chart. And okay, and then paste. While I'm here, I'm going to go to A10 and I'm going to transpose it. So I'm going to right click on A10 and then use paste transpose. I'm going to take out this transpose and sort. We don't need that. Okay. So I'm going to add a total over here. Oh, by the way, the reason I did that was as long as you've got that data copied in your clipboard, I can still edit the tab name and change the worksheet name before I even paste it. And then once I pasted it, if I haven't made any other copies of anything else, it'll still stay in the clipboard, and then you can paste and transpose it, end up with two copies. So when I make these two titles, or the two cells over our data here for C9 and D9, make it bold. I'm going to call it city and avocados eaten. So what this is from the avocado board. And they are demonstrating how many people have eaten avocados in 2013. All right. So this time, I'm going to select at the top my two titles down here to D37. I'm going to use my insert menu. And this time it's going to be a column chart. By the way, once you've got it all selected, do it again. You can use other ways of getting into the charts in the desktop version. So I can right click on it, and one of the options is create charts. So just so you know. You don't have to have everything selected at the beginning. You can always add, as you saw, you can change your data table. However, it's usually just easier to select at the beginning. And we're going to do a column, 2D column chart. And here it comes. Let's stretch it out, make it a little bit bigger. And here's what happens. We have, again, a huge difference. Here's Los Angeles, who has a lot of avocados compared to, say, Charlotte and St. Louis, not as many. So what's happening is, again, it has to stretch it out and has to fit in that long one with the others. But you'll notice when it came over, my labels were vertical like this. As I stretch it out, it automatically switches them to 45 degrees. Why? Because they can put larger fonts and more information in at 45 degrees. Because, oops, I hit delete. I didn't mean to do that. Because what it does here is it gives you more room for your chart. All right, so there's our chart. I'm going to plant it here at I-10, so it grows out from there, and work from it this way. So right now, the way we have it set up, it's not going from lowest to highest. And maybe that's okay. Sometimes you'll want to do that. So let's say we wanted to demonstrate the eating of avocados by alphabetized city names. Well, that's easy. We select our data here. Just like that. I can click on the data ribbon. And then I'm going to do a custom sort, just like we did yesterday. Sort by city. Okay. So down below, you'll see they're in alphabetical order: Atlanta, Baltimore, Boston. And it now matches our sort over here. On the other hand, maybe we want to do it by the number of avocados. So I'm going to select, again, the data table, go to my custom sort. And this time, I want to say by avocados. Now it's set to sort ascending. So it'll go from smallest to highest. And it did, Cincinnati, all the way up to Los Angeles. All right, so in that case, it gives us the bar chart, which again shows our growth. And it does it in a progression that just looks natural. So instead of having a whole bunch of numbers all over the place, this looks like, okay, there's the smallest, there's the largest, I get that. And also, as you notice, as you look at the cities, you realize, the further you go west, the more avocados people tend to eat. So let's go ahead and make some changes to this chart. While we're here, we've got the chart options. So I mentioned this is the 2D bar chart, or pardon me, columns. You can also do this as a bar chart. So if I do this, I'll see what happens. It just flips things now instead of horizontally to vertically. And so they're related. It's just how much room you have on your worksheet and whether you have more vertical room or horizontal room. So they're very similar. So I'm going to change my title. Now, because I selected avocados when I started the chart, it carried it over, but I actually want to do a little more than that. So avocados eaten by city, 2013. As I look, I see I have a gap up here. So we don't have a number that hits 350. Doesn't even hit 300. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my axis to get rid of some of that extra space. So as I scroll down here, I'm going to go to vertical axis. And the maximum, I'm going to change that to 300. That makes things bigger. As I widen my chart, stretch it out some, and the bars or the columns get a little bit wider the further you go. I'm going to scroll down a bit. This time, because we're using avocados, I'm going to go to the fill option and click a light green. You'll notice that my titles now have a little light green behind them. Under series avocados, I'm going to go to fill. I'll make it a darker green. There we go. So now we have our numbers and our columns in avocado green. So once you've got a chart selected, you can change the data. In fact, let's just say I found out that New York had wrong numbers. So I scroll down on my data to New York, and we're going to say per capita, it was 200. When I enter that data, because they're still linked, you notice my chart changes too. So not only when I resorted does the chart change, but also when the data changes. There are ways, like yesterday, where you can lock this in as a picture and then nobody can change it. But that's if you really need that. Most times you don't need that. I'm going to click on my chart ribbon. So you can also modify the things up here that we worked on, so the axis and the grid lines. You can change the fonts. This is a time where some of the fonts do show up a lot better, and the sans serif fonts really work a lot better, especially when you get into the cities here. You'll also notice that when I want to change something, let's say I want to change the city names. So I can actually click on it. If I click on the chart title on the right side, it'll give me the chart title controls. When I click on the columns, it'll give me the series avocado to change. I'm going to add my data labels. So I'm going to click on that, and there come the numbers. Now, it's a lot of numbers. So maybe over here, back in my data table, I'm going to select all those numbers. And I'm just going to round them off. I don't care about the percentages of avocados. So what I'm going to do is change my decimals to decrease decimal by 2 places. As I do that, see how the chart changed? So now it just shows whole numbers and it looks better. So again, you can make the modifications as needed. I did accidentally overlap my chart of some of my data here. So when you print this, you can print the raw data table with it right next to the chart, and then they can see where it came from. Real quick now, I'm going to copy this, paste it below. And say, what does this look like as a line chart? Let's find out. I'm going to use the pointed line chart. There you go. Now those lines in between the dots, they tend to indicate growth. Well, from city to city, there wouldn't really be growth. So that's probably a reason not to use the line chart and why this column looks better, because each column is independent. They're not linked together. Where if you link them together, it's like showing sales of a company by quarter. And look, our sales are going up or our sales are going down. It's showing that there is a link between them. And in this data, there really isn't. Each city is on their own as far as avocados. So again, that's how you choose which one to use. Delete that. And we're done with our bar chart. So it is 6:59. It's break time. We'll come back at 7:09. We'll try some other charts. There's a whole bunch to choose from. All right, we are back. So we're ready for some more charts. I'm going to go back to my chart data. Now it's time for a pie chart. So I'm going to select my data from A20 over to I24. Now really, I went over to I24 because it has the survey title, but really I don't have to. Why? Because that survey of those who agree with the statement starts at A21. So as long as I include A21, it's going to copy over. Same down below with this source. I don't have to copy that whole sentence. The tendency is to want to do it. It doesn't hurt, but I'll just show you. I'm going to Control C to copy, create a new worksheet. So I got a new tab. Call this one pie chart. So now let's see. That's what happens when I paste here. Up at A1, see everything came over, even though I only selected 2 columns worth of information here. I'm going to spread this out some. So they did a survey and they asked people, do you think you are more intelligent than the average person? Well, as you saw yesterday, if you're doing averages, you should pretty much have as many people above the middle as down below. It should be pretty much a 50-50 split some kind. So, you know, if you're not, then you're not average. And then there's actually the mean. Mean is the dead middle. But you'll notice the numbers didn't come out that way. 65% said they strongly agree or mostly agree that they are more intelligent, whereas 35% said they disagree or don't know. So interesting how that comes out. But anyway, we want to turn that into a pie chart. So I'm going to select the titles and the numbers. Now you'll notice here, even though the titles have percent signs, the numbers do not. When using a pie chart, though, it won't make a difference unless you want it to display a certain way. So what I can do, if I want to display with the percentages, is I can click on B3 and B4, and then up here in my formatting on my home ribbon, I do have the percent format. So it converts it from decimal to percentage. So that way it's consistent. So I'll select these two here. That's A3 through B4. I'm going to go to Insert, and then we've got pie chart. Now we have a choice. The 2D pie chart or donut. The only difference between the two is donut doesn't have anything in the middle. I have never seen anybody use the donut. I guess you could, if you're doing like we were doing our bakery stuff, you could do the donut. Or if you want to put a title in the middle or a logo or something, you might do that. But to me, doing that misses kind of the point, as you're going to see with our pie chart. So I'm going to click on the 2D pie chart. It's going to generate it. And here we go. Stretch it out some. I'm going to drop it here at B6. So here you can see the difference between the two visually. I mean, it's overwhelmingly blue. What's blue? We look down here at our legend. Blue is strongly agree or mostly agree. So you can see that's not half and half very clearly. Just because I mentioned it, I'm going to switch it to donut. See, by having that in the middle, I think you'll lose some of the impact of the difference between the two. I mean, it still shows up, but you kind of have to fill in the gap. So like I said, if you ever come across somebody who uses a donut chart and uses it well, give me a call and please tell me how they're doing it, because I'd be very curious to see how that would work out. So pie charts are usually like this. Now in the desktop version, you can actually move it around like 3D. So you can show it at an angle and it will look like it has some depth, and that's kind of pretty. And then you can also use images here instead of colors. So you could show, you know, happy people sitting around in both colors. I'm going to edit the chart title by double clicking on it. So I'll call it survey of those who believe they are smarter than the average person. So see how it fits up there? Because that's such a long title, that this might be a time where I might be tempted to say, no, I don't want to show the title in the chart itself, but I'll put it on the worksheet. So that's an option. Once you select the title, once again, we do have our chart ribbon appearing with our chart tools. And on the right side, we also have our chart tools. So this time, when I double clicked it, I just used the text box to change the chart title, but you could also have done it here. I am going to change the font though. I'm going to make it smaller. I'll make it 10 points. And that kind of matches my legend below. And this time I'm going to leave the legend on. I could turn it off, but I want to leave it on. You can put it to the right of your pie chart. You can put it to the left, to the top, to the bottom. A lot of times you'll see them to the right. So, we read from left to right. So you'll see the chart first, then you'll see here the legend. I do want to increase the size of my legend text. So I'm going to change to 12 points here. And then you can also give it a light gray background. So I'm just going to select light gray background 2. So that tells people what they're seeing. Okay. You'll see here on series 1, we have the option to fill. You can change the colors if you wanted to. You can make it a deep red. And then down here it says vary colors by slice. If you turn that off, then it becomes monochrome. And that works, but I do think the color helps a lot. In, again, the desktop version, there are more ways to change the colors. And as I mentioned, you can even actually show pictures here. So if you want to really get creative, you can. This is the way the desktop version used to look a couple of versions ago. So I'm sure they're still working on it and they'll get more involved here as we go along. But like I said before, if you ever needed those tools, what you could do is take this worksheet. You could tell it up here that you want to open it in your the Open in Desktop app, and it would actually open this up in the desktop app, and then you could close it after you've made the changes and continue working on it in 365. So they can work together. Okay, so we've got the data labels. I'm going to turn those on. And I want to change that font. I'll make it bold and a lot bigger. So I'm going to make it 16. And see how that shows up. So once again, we have our different options here for what the labels can contain. And it's same as before. And the tools are very similar to each other. The only difference is you'll see it here in the pie format. So, once again, you can break it out if you want to and try a different style. So I'm going to copy, paste it down here. Real quick. Let's say I wanted to see what this chart would look like as a column chart. I'm going to click 2D, clustered columns. And there we go. That works. You can obviously tell one's a lot larger, almost double the other one, and they're standing side by side. So that looks good. I think in this case, I prefer the pie chart up here to that, but that would work. It's not wrong. I just think pie chart looks more informative. Okay, we could also turn it into the line chart. And again, see, that wouldn't make much sense. So this one you definitely probably would not want to use because the numbers are there. It's not telling you anything. It's not true, but it's showing you the like the line between, like again, like there's a relationship. Okay, I'm gonna delete that out. Okay, now you'll notice in our data here, we've combined two. So basically, those who think they are smarter than the average person, and those who think they aren't or don't know. All right. So what you could also do is show in proportions the ones who most or strongly agree or mostly agree. So we don't have the numbers for the disagree, but I'm going to change it over here down at A27, strongly agree as 20%. Mostly agree, 45%. And then disagree or don't know. And this one's grouped together, 35%. Now, ideally, your numbers, if you're going to use the pie chart, should add up to 100%. So I could do a quick auto sum. Yep. Always double check your work. So this time I'm going to select these three lines with their percentages. And I'm going to insert. And I'm going to do a pie chart. And you'll see here we get 3 slices. That's because we had 3 items. This one can tend to be a little misleading. And here's why. Because we didn't break out the disagree or don't know, it combined them together. So, you know, there could be a big difference between it. It could be like 5% don't know, 30% disagree. So that 30% is bigger than the 20%. So that would be a bigger pie slice. On the other hand, you know, it could be vice versa, or they could be split down the middle. So by doing this, it makes it seem like there are more people who gave those 2 options. But as you can tell, it's not lying. It's true, but it's true to a certain extent. So you could do it this way if it was significant to show the mostly agree and strongly agree. Because up here, that's such a large portion, the 65%. The way you can do that is you say, all right, so we did a survey, and we found out 65% of people think they're smarter than the average person, 35% don't or aren't sure. Well, let's take a look at that further. So of those 65, I can look here, and I'm going to turn on my data labels. So of those 65, you can see here that 45% of them mostly agreed, while only 20% strongly agreed. So as much as people think they're smarter, it's not that they think by a lot. So there's some doubt in there. So that's how you could use this separately. So you're showing basically the same chart, but now with another color in order to emphasize the 2 numbers that you had for the agree side. So you can always do that too. So I'm going to go up here, copy my chart title here, come down here, and paste. If you were doing this as a presentation in PowerPoint, what you can do is have them on different slides. So you would do this slide first, and then you'd have this one broken out, and so it looks almost exactly the same, and it's on the second slide. And as it moves from one slide to the next, it'll look like the colors change, and it really makes a dramatic change to increase the emphasis of your point. So we'll see that when we get to PowerPoint. But that's the pie charts. Okay, and once again, you can resize them, you can copy them, you can paste them, you can move them to different programs, you can move them to different Excel worksheets, etc. So again, use pie charts when you're trying to show the comparison between like a survey or of a group or something that adds up to 100%, so proportions. You'll notice when we did our bar chart, I mean, obviously these don't add up to 100%. Same with the line graph. Now, could we? Sure, a simple math here. If we added all these up and then we divided each one, we can get the percentage and turn it into a pie chart. So we can use this data to convert it if you really want a pie chart, if you want to show like the percentage. On the other hand, if your goal here is to just show Los Angeles beats everybody, this pretty much does it. The pie chart would too, but not by much. You know, it'll just show a large color segment like this, but either one in that case would be appropriate. But that's how you convert them from one type of chart to the other, given the data that you have. All right, no questions on pie charts. Then let's go back to our chart data. We're going to do the vertical bar chart. This is a list of popular baby names in the 2010s by the US Census, or US Social Security, pardon me. They should know because everybody gets a Social Security number. So I'm going to select from A26 down to I-15. Create a new worksheet. And this one's going to be the vertical bar chart. We're going to do 2. So I'm going to paste the information here. So moving from left to right, we got the male names. Here's the name, and here's the number of kids that were named those names. So once again, if I want to start off with just having my data kind of lead into some conclusions, I'm going to turn it into a comma format. And then I'm going to go to my data menu and do a custom sort. Sort by number. And I'll do it ascending. And so you'll see the smallest number first and the largest number at the end. Okay, while I have those two selected, I've still got them highlighted. I'm going to insert and a 2D bar chart. This one, I definitely need to stretch out here. So you can see all the names. You'll also notice my numbers here are overlapping on my horizontal figure. And that's because they are so large. So you'll notice they're in the 100,000s. So as I stretch them out, you see I'm still getting hard to read at the bottom. So let's make some changes here. I'm going to go to my horizontal axis. Because we are looking at such large numbers, they can't all show down there. So what I can do is change the units. See, the units are going by 20,000. I can change that to 50,000. See, now they're easier to read. I don't have as many of them down here, and none of my number of names is below 50,000, so that works. You run into problems if the smallest number is lower than your major units. But in this case, no problem. All right, I do want to change the title. And then boy baby names. And what was the year? 2013, right? Oh, 2010s. I guess it was over the decade. Okay, now this gives us the bar chart stacked vertically, meaning they're stacked on top of each other instead of like we had the horizontal columns. And you could have done columns with this one too. This one, they're probably interchangeable. So here we're set up with the boy baby names. We can also do, from this point, down here where it says number, that is our lower horizontal axis. So I'm going to turn on the tick marks on the inside. Now, when it comes to the names on the vertical axis, I don't have to do that because there's no intermediary between Noah and Liam, right? It doesn't convert from Liam, right? So they're independent and distinct, whereas the numbers down below, they are moving from one to the next and you're counting across. So while I have this up, I'm going to go up here to the top. I am going to go to the vertical axis. And this type of chart, you do have a special tool. You'll see gap width, where we didn't see that before. This is the width, the blank space between each bar. So I'm going to shrink it and watch what happens. See how much thicker they get? On the other hand, I can really make them skinny until they're basically just a line and do it that way too. But I like them thicker, but at the same time, you kind of want to have a gap there. If you take out the gap, then they kind of blend into each other. And that could be okay if you're doing that for effect. But I want to leave a little bit in there. So something like that. So again, it's really personal preference and what you think communicates your message best. So this is how you do the bar chart. Now, like I said, I could run it to a column, 2D column chart. And that works too. You just have to read the names across the bottom. So my tendency would be to want to use something like this because the first thing you see is the first most popular name down to, not the least popular, but the least on our chart. And so it's easier to read, I think, stacked up this way. All right, so let's do the girls' names. Now, two ways to do it is we could start and select just like we did before. I do want to sort them in the same manner I did before. So I'm going to select, I'm going to include the titles, but the names and the number, I'm going to turn on the comma formatting. There we go. And then I am going to do my sort. Sort them by number. You could sort them by name, it'll be alphabetical, but I'll do by number, ascending. So it starts off with Addison with 70,000 up to Emma with 194,000. All right, so I could just generate a chart off of that, or here's what I'm going to do, because I pretty much have this one laid out with some of my changes, my modifications, and I want both charts to be very similar to each other. I'm just going to copy this and then over here at X2, paste. All right, so I've got the chart here. I'm going to go to my chart ribbon. And you'll see it says select data. So right now it's vertical bar charts and it says B4 with the absolute formulas to C24. Well, here's the thing. The girls are not in that, that's the boys. So the girls are from H5 down to I24. Now I will say, let's do this again here. Let's change it and I'll tell you the difference. So it was H5, yep, H5 to I24. And see how it all changed? Slide over. Yeah. In the desktop version, when you do this, where you select data, you can actually go and scroll over and select on the cells that you want to include. In this case, I can't, I have to type them. If I click off of it, say nothing happens. So that's, again, one of the differences between 365 and the desktop. However, this works just as well. And it helps that my row and columns are pretty similar. So all I really had to do is change the column H and I, and it worked. I want to change the color. So in this case, to get right to it, I double clicked on the series and then fill. And then if you want to be stereotypical, I guess, or the way they go, is it blue for boys, pink for girls? Somebody told me that it was like till the 1930s, it was the opposite. That red was for boys and blue is for girls. If you don't see the color you want here, you can, in the desktop version, change the color. But let's go with a light color like this. So that gives it kind of a pastel. I do need to change my chart title, but all I do now is type in the word girl instead of boy. Okay. If you want to avoid the pink for girls, blue for boys things altogether, you can change it any color you like. So let's have the girls be green. I'm going to double click on the boys, click on the fill, and they can be brown. It's dark brown here. So while I'm on there, the other thing you do is you give each bar an outline. Remember how we were able to adjust the width? If you want to highlight it, you give them both like a yellow outline. So they do have something in common. And it just makes each bar stand out a little more. The other thing that'll make a difference in your decisions on the colors and the bars is how are you going to present this? So if I print it on paper and I print on a black and white printer, these are going to be shades of gray. If I print them with a color printer, obviously you get the color. And if I show them on a screen, then it'll be a lot larger and the colors will be more distinct. So, you know, again, it pays to practice and just kind of see which one's going to work better for you. But you got lots of options. So this is a way that you can modify one chart and then create another one off of it that's going to be very similar, so you can compare and contrast. You can move charts over next to each other and overlap them. In the 365, you can't make the background invisible, but you can actually do that with something like PowerPoint. So you can kind of see them overlapping each other. Or if you really wanted to do that, what I could do is I could have a table where I had the names of the kids and their numbers. And then when I go up to insert my bar chart, you'll see I can have the clustered one, but I can also use stacked. So it'll show the different color on top as it goes through the numbers with the names on there. Okay, so that is our bar chart. It basically is the same chart we had before, but it's tilted on the side. So it's very similar to column. And they are related in the way that you demonstrate your data. But the good news is they work very similarly. All right, let's go to another one. I'm going to click back on my chart data. And now we're going to do an area chart. So I'm going to select the name area chart at A52 down to K58. Copy. Create a new tab. Call it area chart. And paste. So this is, by the US Census Bureau, the growth of food trucks in different states. So I'm going to select the data and the year. I don't want the census in there. So this one, we're going to use the area chart here. And the reason is we want to show the two numbers together, or the two years, 2018, 2013. And it's going to show the values over time, whether increasing or decreasing. Instead of time, though, we've also got the states. So it's going to be by state. So I'm going to click on 2D area chart here. And here we go. So here's a time where we're not just doing a solid, like before we just did 2018, 1 year over different states. So like the avocados, there was this one period. Well, now we're going to compare 2018 and 2013. You'll notice that in my data, 2018, almost all the numbers increased by a pretty big jump over 2013. So that's where this comes in hand, this area fill. I'm going to expand it. And there we go. And the reason is you can see 2013, that's kind of like our line graph, but it's filled in down below. And then you can see 2018 and you can see the significant increases behind it. Because it's larger, it's going to be behind it. If you put it in front of it, you wouldn't see anything with 2013. It would block it out. So I'm going to click on my chart title. And I'm going to call this Growth in Taco Trucks. I'll have to look up and see if they post any statistics, because that, I'll bet, changed a lot with COVID. So, this was all before COVID. All right. So we've got our states down below. Again, you can sort this any way you like. This kind of has a natural sort because as it was reported, we have 2013 on the bottom, 2018 on the top. So you wouldn't jumble up the years. In this case, we only have 2, so it's not bad. But you could do 3 or 4. If you do, you usually put them in order. And again, you can flip these, but you don't want to block out a whole bunch of data. So in other words, let's say 2018 would be who here? I'm going to pick on Ohio. So Ohio in 2018 had a drop. So they lost taco trucks. Maybe they drove out of state or something. So I'm going to make them 50. Okay, watch what happens to my chart. Oh, look. Now I can't see where Ohio was in 2018. Or pardon me, 2013. No, I'm sorry. Right. Yeah, 2018. Because 2018 is the blue and it's supposed to be bigger. When I hover over it, I can see it. I can see where it's supposed to be, but I can't see it because 2013's in front of it. In this case, you might reconsider and say, I like the colors, but I better go with a line chart here. some points here, because see, that will let you see behind it. So this, again, is the judgment you make when you choose what type of chart. If that really happened, I would probably go with the line chart. But luckily it didn't. So I'm going to undo my data, put the data back, and the chart updates. And there you can see it. All right, let's make a few changes. So I want to include the data labels. And this is for series 2018, meaning this is only the year 2018. So when I turn on the data labels, you'll only see them here on the, this orange, but not in the blue. If I want to turn them on the blue, I have to go down to the second series, series 2013, and turn those data labels on too. So that way it puts in the numbers to go along with it. You can change the colors. So if I don't like that orange, I want to make it a bright red, I can do that. I'll tell you right now, if you look at the border between the red and the blue and you stare at it long enough, it can cause eye strain. So that's not a good color combination. So in this case, I say, all right, just change up, and instead of blue, and instead of that dark orange, let's make it a green, light green. There we go. Then you get a little bit more contrast. Okay. One of the options you have in this type of chart is you'll see the data table. You can turn on the data table and it'll actually show you the table below the chart in the chart itself. I don't know if you noticed when I did that though, I lost some space, some vertical space, so it crunched it up. So again, you can do that. We only had 2 rows of data, so it's not too bad, but if you had 50 rows of data, that's probably not going to be helpful. The other thing too is it incorporates it into the chart itself. Meaning, if I move this over into a Microsoft Word document, let's say I'm doing a paper on the growth in taco trucks in the United States, and I want to show this chart. When I copy this over, the data table comes with it, displaying in the chart, meaning I don't have to copy the chart and then come back and copy this table and then format it and bring it back. It's all included all in one. The drawback is it gives you less space to show your data above it. So I can turn that off. So again, there's give and take. I want to go to the vertical axis now. And I'm going to add in some tick marks. I'm going to put in some major tick marks on the outside this time. And just scroll down. See, it's kind of like little arrows pointing to the state name. So those are kind of handy because you'll see they just float across and there's no lines going across. All right, so that shows us the growth in taco trucks over 2 years. And as I said, you could add 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and they'll be different colors. So that's how the area chart works. Other rules on the area chart are just the same. You can lengthen how much you're showing in the graph here by changing the top number from 800 to 1,000 if you wanted to. You could also shrink it down. You could stretch it out. And the more you stretch it out, it changes the shape. The more you crunch it in, it gives you a different impression as you're looking at the shapes compared to each other. And from reading this quickly, you can tell who had the most growth in taco trucks. Well, California. If we put our 2 charts together, I wonder if the growth in taco trucks has a lot to do with maybe they're serving guacamole and that increased the avocado consumption. So now I can start making some 2-chart comparisons. So any questions on our area chart? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 charts out of all this data here. And you can go online, and as I said, the Census Bureau, in this case, the Avocado Board, the EPA, all those places constantly publishing stats. So if you're ever trying to demonstrate a point, go take a look at those and see what they got, and I'll bet you can find anything you like. Even watch the Social Security Administration's baby names. Now, I don't know if it's a veterinary organization or it's one of the pet stores, they publish pet names and the growth in pet names. So you can track that too. That'd make an interesting chart. So that's how our charts work. Again, as your data is updated, you can have the charts update. The other thing you can do is, I'll just do this real quick. I could create a new tab. I want to paste my growth and taco trucks here, and I could have this take up the whole page, and it doesn't have to be linked. Well, it doesn't have to demonstrate or show the data. The data goes back here to my area chart from this. So let's say California, make it 1,000. So when that updates, my sheet here will update as well. So it doesn't have to be on the same worksheet. Change it back. You can actually create your own sheet this way with just the chart. So the data can be in one sheet and the chart in the other. When you start it, you start with your worksheet here, and then you move it. In the desktop version, you can actually, if I were here on the sheet 1 and I wanted to change the data, I don't have to go to my source data. I could just go up here to chart and select data. And you'll see now it says area chart. So that it's telling it the tab name and then the address where the information is. So that's a 3D link. So I'm going to delete that tab so I don't need it. It's going to give me the warning. Yes, I'm fully aware I'll lose it forever, but that's okay because I still have my area chart here, and I can always copy and paste another one. So as you're working with charts, you kind of just experiment with them and see which one works best. As you start using them, you get a feel for which ones work for the different types of data. But it's real easy to experiment. It doesn't cost you anything except a little time. So by all means, work with them. And I think, like I said, they're a lot more fun than just plain tables of data. That can get a little boring. If you do get into like QuickBooks, QuickBooks does have some ways to generate some charts, but you can also export your data from QuickBooks into Excel. What that means is you can take the numbers from there and turn them into some pretty snazzy charts and impress everybody, impress the boss like crazy. Because all those figures are very interesting, but we as humans will see the patterns in the diagrams of the charts more than we'll see like here. Like I could tell you just as I look, I could see, one year's bigger than the other, but just at a glance, I couldn't tell you, is there any state where 2018 had a lower number than 2013? I have to go look at these and compare them. Well, look at this. One glance here, I could tell you, oh, no way. The green is always lower than the blue. Therefore, 2018, which is blue, is always higher. So you see, you can draw different conclusions from that. With QuickBooks, you can show over time the growth of certain products and even how they trail off at certain points of the year. You can demonstrate the income and the profits that you make and all kinds of things. So it gets pretty powerful. All right, well, if you don't have any questions about charts, then we are done for the evening. Have a great night, and we'll be back here tomorrow.